after 6 weeks, I was ready. At least that's what they said. I had fear about not being the elite of the nursing world, a flight nurse. I gravitated towards the desperately ill, so my friend told me about helicopter ambulances that transport patients from accidents. Everything from patients not hurt bad to doomed. So I sent a resume. I was grinning about what a cool job this was. Until my first day. We landed and a fire engine transported us to the accident. Facial fractures are graded 1 to 4. This guy was a 15. His blood sprayed my goggles as we strapped him to the backboard. But there was no place on the fire engine. So my crew piled into the back of a stranger's truck. Then our carjack driver gunned the motor and made us fall over. Our patient nearly slid off the truck. But when our helicopter finally lifted off, I felt his strong pulse. And we had him in a trauma center in 10 minutes. I was glad my first day was over. The old adage goes, never meet your heroes. It's true. I met Kanye. He was surprisingly warm and a good listener. I was disappointed. But I submit another adage. Never land your dream job. The BBC, November 25th, 2016 reports, it's not unusual to get your dream job and then hate it, because we fail to consider that our ideal job may fall short of expectations and have unrealistic hopefulness that the job will equal happiness. We need to remember that every career has its downside, and that our expectations with school, relationships, and even jobs are dangerous. Much like fruitcake, something can sound great in theory, but doesn't work in practice. Trauma Junkie by Janice Hudsen. I first learned the cardinal rules for being a flight nurse from a fellow nurse. Cute, male, with a great tush. In San Francisco, that usually meant gay. But I found out he wasn't, to my surprise and delight. First rule, 24-hour shifts. If you come to work tired, it's inevitable. You will fly all day and night. Consequences for flight nurses after a night on the town are worse. The beeper gods take delight in torturing those poor souls. I got a hint about the second rule during my initial interview. The chief flight nurse had several questions regarding my bladder capacity. A pretty intimate subject to discuss with a complete stranger. However, I realized these questions were appropriate on a 3 a.m. flight after consuming 3 cups of herbal tea. Every bounce was agony. I learned there are no rest stops at 1,500 feet. During an early flight, I was on the roller coaster from hell. My hands shook, sweating. Nurses managed 4 radios, millions of buttons. Keying up the mic, I told the pilot, "Dispatch wants to know our ETA." Then I heard dispatch snickering, "Nurse, this is dispatch. Hit intercom. Oh, sorry." Many patients were drug deals gone awry. Gang members were not initiated until they had one ride with us. Bullet wounds, stab wounds, some repeat customers. Calls were exciting and depressing. But flying got them care in that first golden hour. The best chance for survival. One of my first week's calls, a man lay unresponsive. I had to tube him. I eased it in, and without warning, he opened his eyes and enunciated quite clearly, "Get that out of my nose!" Oh, you're awake. As we flew home, I crouched in my seat. The patient was pink, warm, dry. Signs I failed to notice. How could I be so stupid? Each day, you might get no calls, or 5 in a row. My best was 7. I realize now those were symptoms of adrenaline addiction. One night, the phone jarred us awake. Infant with umphilitis. An infected belly button. Someone was going to get an earful about using an emergency helicopter. Muttering obscenities, we headed out, keeping our philosophy. You call, we haul. An hour later, I took off the infant's diaper, and this little guy was in better shape than I was. My partner rolled her eyes, and a nervous young pediatrician implored us to hurry, but we weren't going to dawdle. Our beds were waiting. When we landed at the children's hospital an hour later, I was testy in giving my report to the staff. I was still fuming the next day, and I was going to call about our wasteful flight. Before that, I wanted to see if the baby was discharged. But he coded. Even with perfectly timed, flawless care, people die. We had been bitching the entire flight. Now this kid died. This taught me never cop an attitude. It only reveals ignorance. Building an emotional bunker is the only way to survive. One busy Saturday night, we got a call. 18-year-old female, 16 weeks pregnant, with severe abdominal pain and bleeding. Boyfriend assaulted her, kicked her in the abdomen repeatedly. Delivery of the fetus, imminent. When we landed at the ER, the mood was ugly. Patients were stalking the hallways. I've been waiting 2 hours. My sinuses are killing me. You don't care, do you? As we transferred our pregnant patient to a gurney, the sinus woman hurled that phrase we've all heard before. You call yourselves an emergency room? Blood splashed onto the floor, and the doctor tried to stop it. The sinus woman vowed to call administration about what a shoddy operation this was. Then our patient delivered. The team ran the gurney to the OR, leaving me with a bloody bundle. An infant, 6 inches long, attempting to gulp air. No chance of survival. The sinus woman caught sight. Hey, nurse, bitch, I'm talking to you. Can't you people get anything right? I shut the door. I drew a basin of warm water, and I bathed him. Then I bundled him in blankets, rocking him while he struggled, clinging to life. And finally died. Nurses are privileged to share in life's most significant moments. Death. Some are peaceful, expected. Others are nightmares that leave us shaken, speechless. Most people view death as tragic. I feel death is natural. It's the circumstances that can be tragic. For years, I cared for others. But as caregivers, we have to learn to care for ourselves. After time, nurses don't recognize their own needs. Learning to care for myself has been hard. I can choose to live in misery, or I can choose to live in joy. I pick joy. I wrote my resignation letter. It broke my heart. But it was time. The first question people ask flight nurses is, aren't you afraid you're going to crash? No. The most dangerous part of a shift is the drive home from work.